Welcome back to the Decatur Dish on Atlanta News First Plus. I am joined by our media partners at Decaturish, the one and only Dan Wisenhunt. And Dan, we've had everything from controversy to viral moments to civic updates in DeKalb County. There's a lot of news that has transpired over the past week and couple weeks, really.
Keeps us busy, keeps us employed.
Certainly. So let's talk about the big one this morning, the ribbon cutting and grand opening of the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. We saw the mayor was in attendance. Governor Brian Kemp came out, as well as many city leaders, in a project that has really dominated news headlines for well over 2 years, really since 2015 when the conversation first started around this. And now to this moment of that ribbon cutting, this 85-acre, multi-million-dollar property on DeKalb County's South River Forest. Have you heard any recent conversation from community members now that this training center is finally open?
It's open, but we're still going to be litigating it for a while. There are arrests that occurred during the protest of the training center. There's a young man from Decatur who was arrested and is suing the Atlanta Police Department. I remember when the protests first happened, and I was talking to some friends of mine who were aghast that this was happening and said that there's no way it could ever be built. And I said, if I know one thing about Atlanta, it's that when this city makes up its mind to do something and the business community and the political leadership get behind it, it is going to happen one way or another. And that is pretty much the story with this training center. Whatever you feel about it, the business and political leadership of Atlanta decided they were going to build this and they weren't going to let anybody stand in their way or stop them. Make of that what you will. Imagine if they applied that same tenacity to something like, I don't know, affordable housing. Wonder what kind of progress we can make on that.
There's a lot more to talk about there with you for sure. With this opening of the Public Safety Training Center, the location being in DeKalb County, and how much conversation this has generated, as I'm sure we will continue to talk about as this progresses and really we start to see what a functional public training center looks like. We will continue to cover that here on Atlanta News First, and of course I know your team at Decatur will do so as well. If you wanted to see that full ribbon cutting, including the remarks, city leaders talking about their hope for this in the future, you can go to our website, atlantanewsfirst.com. But I want to talk about a viral moment in DeKalb County, specifically at Martin Luther King Jr. High School, where there was a video that is now just blowing up on social media, and it is what appears to be a fight between students and a teacher.
That is what the video appears to show. Jim Bass, our education reporter, just left a press conference that Superintendent Devin Horton had. He talked about the fight. He made it seem as though it wasn't quite as clear-cut as the video would indicate. Of course, that's always how it goes with the viral videos. There was some implication that there had been words exchanged before the fight started. As a parent, as an old school guy, I just look at that video and I see so many people in need of butt whoopings. Just so many that need to be distributed. It's unreal. But that is what happened. It was captured on video. It wasn't our finest hour in DeKalb County, but there you go. That's what happened. It went down in a school. People have been suspended. The teacher's on administrative leave. Charges will be leveled, certainly. I don't know if any butt whippings will, but there might need to be. That's just my opinion, my controversial hot take.
I did want to ask you, as we've seen reaction from some people online, where the teacher did, in a way, retaliate and threw a fist back at the students. And, we talk about children versus adults here. So two sides of a story, of course, and whether that was appropriate to begin with.
Well, if a group of young people put their hands on an adult and the adult punches back, I mean, it's a chaotic situation. You're going to get what you get. Fight or flight reactions are real. People react how they do in the heat of the moment. What I want to know is, how did we get to that point where fists started flying? It feels like there could have been some de-escalation that could have occurred in that situation. Just embarrassing. The whole thing is embarrassing. It's a bad look for the schools, and hopefully the leadership will reassess and figure out a way to de-escalate these things before they end up on the Atlanta Uncensored Facebook page with 1 million views or whatever. So we get to be famous for all the wrong reasons in DeKalb County. Maybe that bad press will get everybody to focus on doing the right thing next time, so that won't happen again.
And of course, we've been talking about school safety and creating an environment for students to learn, which doesn't result in something like this. So we have more coverage on the legislative side and the action that's being taken for that. And of course, we're going to keep an eye out on DeKalb County and the DeKalb school districts on their continued plans to make sure, like you said, Dan, this never happens again. Speaking of an issue that has come up time and time again and now is getting closer attention, I want to continue the conversation around police chases. We have heard of many devastating stories surrounding police pursuing a suspect or pursuing a person of interest, and that ending in a deadly or tragic way, sometimes with bystanders and innocents involved. And earlier this month, a chaotic scene unfolded in Tucker after state troopers chased suspects who were allegedly in a stolen vehicle. Talk to me about that.
They were in a stolen Kia, Maria. Let's be clear. We're not even talking about a Benz. It was a Kia vehicle. These young men, all teenagers, I think the oldest was 18, were accused of allegedly riding in the stolen vehicle. A chase ensued. Apparently, at one point, one of the driver evaded the precision immobilization technique, this pit maneuver you've all heard so much about. There were 3 vehicles that were hit in the middle of it. No injuries, thankfully. It's one of those things that sounded bad and yet could have been a whole lot worse. Here to talk to us about the impact of police chases and other pedestrian safety issues in DeKalb County is Rebecca Cerna with Propel ATL.
We'll be talking with her right after this short break.
And joining us today is Rebecca Cerna, I got it right this time, the director of Propel ATL. Rebecca, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. How are you, Dan?
Cannot complain. Tell us a little bit about what Propel ATL does. I know what Propel ATL does, but our viewers may not. What is your organization? What does it do?
Propel ATL is a nonprofit, and what we do is bring together communities to advocate for safe streets and more reliable and frequent public transit so that people don't have to own a car to get around Atlanta.
Rebecca, recently DeKalb County made a lot of news. The new CEO is of the opinion that the reason that we have drag races and crime in certain areas is because it is known among people who drag race that DeKalb police will not chase them. So she changed this policy to allow for more chases, and she also increased collaboration with the Georgia State Patrol, which is famously engaged in a lot of police chases. What's your opinion about DeKalb County loosening its regulations on when these chases can occur?
We are concerned that when you involve Georgia State Patrol at the state level, there need to be limits on police pursuits. There need to be guardrails put up that really protect the public, because right now what we're seeing is pursuits are being initiated that don't have enough limits on the cause of the pursuit and that may not present an immediate threat to the public until a high-speed chase is initiated. And so we're really looking forward to working with the county and trying to come up with common sense measures that can make it harder to speed, because if you look at street design and you have 7, 8, 9 lane highways that are flat and they're really designed for high speeds, then you're going to see a lot of speeding. But by working together, we can redesign those streets so that they're safer, and then you'll have less need for pursuits.
Rebecca, did you read the story that we published about this chase that happened in Tucker the other day?
I did.
What was your take on that?
Again, I think, taxpayers have paid for a lot of technologies like flock cameras. We're one of the most surveilled regions in the country. There's other technology like GPS trackers that can actually be shot out and put on a suspect's vehicle. So I think we need to be using technology to track down these nonviolent or less violent, less immediate threat to the public type of incidents. The other part is that sometimes people who are suspected of a crime, they may just be trying to get to a safer place to stop. So these pursuits really need to be more limited so that we can protect innocent bystanders and people just trying to live their lives in their neighborhoods.
So in that chase, there were 3 vehicles that were damaged. The potential for injury was really high, especially when you consider that the driver was allegedly a teenager. I believe they were driving an allegedly stolen Kia. Do you think we should just at least have a higher dollar amount on the value of property you're going to risk somebody's life for? I feel like a Kia is just too low a bar. Should it be like a Benz or a Cybertruck even? What is I guess the larger question is there any reason that its chase should happen? Is there any policy that you would support that would require a chase? Is there any piece of property that's worth this?
I think we need to value people's lives most highly, first and foremost. And to me, no risk of human loss of life is anywhere near equivalent of a property risk or a threat to property. There's the 2023 DOJ, Department of Justice report, I think you referenced as well, that said if there's an immediate threat to the public of a violent crime that may be about to happen, that is really the only justification for one of these dangerous high-speed chases, particularly when you're talking about places like Atlanta, where we just have a lot of people out walking and a lot of people in these densely populated areas, business districts and neighborhoods, that are just going about their day, and they didn't ask to be involved in a high-speed chase.
Right. And then there was the thing that happened in Little Five Points, which I believed involved a state trooper also as well. Talk to me about that. What do you know about that incident?
Yeah, from what we've read, there was someone driving erratically on the highway, and Georgia State Patrol initiated pursuit of that person who was suspected, that exited the highway then and drove into Little Five Points. Now, Little Five Points on Moreland Avenue, there's a location there that has some of the highest pedestrian crossings in the whole city, and the suspect ended up allegedly hitting someone who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. A 19-year-old kid actually graduated from the school where my kids go, and just to see the heartbreak that family is going through. And it all could have been prevented. This was very much a preventable incident from the standpoint of the pursuit. Of course, you never know what's going to happen in these cases, but once a pursuit has been initiated and the chase is underway, you know that they're fleeing at a high speed already. And so by continuing to pursue in those cases, unless there's an immediate risk to the public, the likelihood of something ending in a crash that kills an innocent bystander is extremely high. And we know from the AJC's investigation that Georgia has the deadliest rate for police pursuits in the whole country, and that's really, really concerning.
Most often involving state troopers, because they're allowed to use the pit maneuver, precision, immobilization technique.
And just because of the high numbers of chases that they're getting involved in. And, when you don't have a policy that requires a supervisor to approve the pursuit, when you don't have a policy that says it has to be this kind of violent crime or immediate threat to the public, then you're going to see a lot more of these. And in 2020, we saw a huge spike in Georgia State Patrol involved pursuits.
I just want to put the word out there. If anybody steals my Malibu and you want to chase somebody over it, please don't. And in fact, if you steal my Malibu, you might be doing me a favor in the long run. So just put that out there officially. Don't risk anybody's life over that car. I promise you it is not worth it. Rebecca, you recently at Propel ATL released a great report that has all of this. It's a sobering report because it's got a lot of information about pedestrian deaths and injuries, but it's great in the sense that it has a lot of really granular detail that we had not had before. And it's the first, I believe it's the first study that you've done that has kind of gone beyond the city core, right?
Yeah, this was our first year looking at the MARTA service area, so Fulton, Clayton, and DeKalb counties.
What were the key takeaways from that report overall? And then I want to drill down into DeKalb County for a minute.
Yeah, some of the biggest things for me that jumped out from the work our researchers did is that while overall crashes went down and there were some communities that saw bigger increases than others. For example, City of Atlanta a few years ago put in place the goal of eliminating traffic deaths and serious injuries, and they experienced a 35% drop in pedestrian fatalities in 2023. So that was great to see that some of these policies are starting to pay off. On the other hand, in DeKalb County, we saw an increase in pedestrian fatalities as well as in traffic fatalities overall, even though crashes fell in DeKalb County. So more of those crashes ended up being deadly. Another thing that really jumped out at me is that over the past 5-10 years, traffic fatalities and homicides have been at about the same numbers in that 3-county area that we looked at. Yet you hear so much about murder in the news, and it feels sometimes like traffic deaths just are kind of background noise, and that we've grown to accept that as the cost of mobility and our transportation systems. But we really don't have to, because I think it's actually a lot easier to prevent traffic deaths than to prevent homicides.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Now, interestingly, when the CEO announced the new policy regarding chases, one of the things she cited was that study, and she said that a lot of the fatalities happened on state highways, and her contention was by asking Georgia State Patrol to do more enforcement along state highways, it would reduce pedestrian deaths. What do you make of that?
The crash reports that we looked at, for example, those young women crossing the street to get to the convenience store after her work shift had ended, they appeared to be just regular old speeding, not necessarily street racing. And when you have roads like Memorial Drive, which are 7 to 10 lanes, really designed for high speed, but at the same time we have a lot of apartments built along those. We have a lot of transit, people walking to the bus. When we looked at the crash reports, what we saw was the street design contributing to drivers going really fast and in the same space that people are walking and trying to get to bus stops in high numbers. So that's really what we saw.
Rebecca, we have a new CEO. She took office in January. Have you had any chances to talk to her either right before she took office or right after? And what have those conversations been like?
We are working on scheduling a conversation with the new CEO, and we've been in touch with other DeKalb County leaders and staff. And we know they share our concern about these numbers, and it's definitely something that's going to require everyone to work together at the state level as well, because to your point, the deadliest corridors that we found in our study were these state routes that are really designed like highways.
Rebecca, switching gears, we for a long time have had these colorful planters in Decatur along West Howard Avenue, and they were always intended to be temporary for one reason or another. They were a lot longer in their temporariness than people imagine, but it appears that Decatur is finally getting ready to remove the planters and replace them with something a little more permanent, something that achieves the same objective but will be there longer. What is your take about on the planters? I know the planters got a lot of criticism. It's been the butt of a lot of jokes, a lot of our jokes specifically. We've had a lot of fun with it. But people will defend them and say, despite how they look and how silly it seems, they did their job. Do you agree with that?
I love the planters, and I especially love them because Decatur tried something that was relatively cheap, and they tested it to see if it would work, and it worked, and now they're going to make it permanent. And I wish that more communities would do that, because a lot of times the barrier to making streets safer is that we're trying to build that big end-all be-all project, and there isn't the funding or there's not the political will. But testing solutions out in communities, I think, is a great approach. And if Decatur wants to drop those planters off in front of my house, I will use them to make my street safer.
Or a container garden. We've had kind of a running bet in the office. Could we get one of these to plant some tomatoes in it? Decatur, if you're listening, I'll give you my address. You can drop one of these things off at my house. We got a place for them. I will say, from a personal standpoint, I know they are effective because I would often forget they were there, and I'd be driving into Decatur, and I'd go, "What in the heck are these things?" And then I remember, "Oh yeah, it's the planters." So you're in favor of these sort of outside the box solutions to pedestrian safety?
Well, it's pretty simple. If you narrow traffic lanes and create safe spaces for people to walk and bike and access transit, then you're going to actually create a safer overall transportation system. So yeah, whatever we can do to get to that point and to get there faster, because every day that we have streets that are overbuilt, that are really designed for these high speeds, is one more day that we're going to put people's lives at risk, especially people walking.
It's April now. We're about to be at the 5-month mark. Propel ATL has already been in the news doing a lot of advocacy work with these reports that you've been putting out. You've gotten a lot of public discussion going. What are you going to focus on for the rest of the year? What other things can we expect from your organization?
Yeah, we're really focused on how can we activate community members that have been waiting a long time for these transportation improvements that we've been talking about. Things like sidewalks, raised crosswalks that make it safe to cross the street, protected bike lanes so that people have that physical separation from these high-speed cars. And in the city of Atlanta, there's a big pot of money, Moving Atlanta Forward money, waiting to be spent on these transportation projects. So what we're going to be focused on is working really at the grassroots community level to help people advocate for those projects in their communities that will make them all safer and have more options for getting around, because I don't know if you've noticed, but maybe with your Malibu, it's expensive to own a car. The cost of owning a car has gone about 75% in the last 5 years, and it's not getting cheaper anytime soon. So
Even
we
a
need to
Kia.
give people other options, even the Kias.
Even a Kia, it's expensive to own. Rebecca, what are some events? We have Streets Alive occasionally. I think we just had one that was pretty successful. What other kinds of events celebrating pedestrians and connectivity are on the calendar for y'all in 2025?
Every year, Propel ATL holds the annual Blinky Awards, and that's coming up May 9th, Friday night in the West End. And we're just going to be bringing together the people that are doing this work, that are advocating in their neighborhoods, getting folks out on bikes, getting more frequent bus service, safer pedestrian crosswalks, that kind of thing, and celebrating them. We give them an award, and we come together and we try to build that community. So that's the Blinky Awards, May 9th. And then the next Atlanta Streets Alive will be on Sunday, May 18th. And that will be our Grant Park to West End route, which is one of my favorites.
I was thinking about you and Propel ATL the other day because I had a few days off, and I walked from the Decatur MARTA station in Avondale all the way to Piedmont Park.
Oh, wow.
And it was quite a hike. I did enjoy it. But it struck me that it is really cool for a city as big as Atlanta is to be able to have that kind of infrastructure there. And I didn't, I crossed the area in Little Five that we just talked about where it was really busy with Moreland. But other than that, it was a real safe walk. So I do hope people will take time to appreciate the pedestrian infrastructure that we have here in Atlanta. Rebecca, as always, we appreciate you and the great work that you do at Propel ATL, and we hope you'll join us again sometime.
Thank you so much.
This is the Decatur Dish Show. We stream right here on Atlanta News First Plus every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. To check us out, download that Atlanta News First Plus app. It's completely free. It's a great way to support our partners at Atlanta News First. To check out all the latest news from Decatorish, visit Decaturish.com. With that, we hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you here next Tuesday right here at 12:30 p.m. Stay safe, everybody.